it made me realize that I know exactly how she feels. And I realized that I wasn't the only one that was alone. There was someone else who knew exactly how I felt, and I didn't have to be alone anymore. I could finally open up my shell and be who I really am.
Who wrote this?
It's great, right?
You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I have returned back to the podcast from vacation, and some of you may have looked at the post that I had on the channel and known that I have tried to get myself up to speed upon return, which meant I sat through not just 1 hour of Raw. Not Raw. Wow. Where did Raw come from? Maybe I'm thinking about a better wrestling show. But anyhow, I not only sat through 1 hour of WOW, I sat through 2. That's right. I did both weekends back to back because as I was away, WOW wasn't airing where I was at. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't air in Vegas. It probably does air in Vegas at some point, but the resort that I was in did not pick up that channel, so I didn't bother with it. And I said I'm not going to go out my way to try to go look at YouTube and piece the show together. I am just going to wait until I can sit down, go home, turn on the Tableau, which is basically a DVR recorder for over-the-air broadcast. I had one of those some months ago just in case of an event like this. I was like, I'll just set it to record and I'll get back to it. And I did. And I watched it. And quite honestly, if I were not at a job that, I think I wrote this already, if I weren't at a job that aired this week to week on the days that I work, I probably wouldn't be watching it anymore after this. I probably would not be watching it. This, I get that there have fans out there that love and adore WOW, and I know that there's people that's on that roster like, WOW is the best thing that ever happened to me, or, stuff like that. I mean, I get it. And nor do I expect nor want anybody that's on their roster to dislike it necessarily. But, I mean, let me put it this way. At least a quarter, if not half of that roster is very aware of everything that I say as far as this doesn't make any sense. Why did that happen? What is he talking about? What are they doing this for? Where did this come from? At least a quarter to half of that roster is very aware of what I'm talking about when I mention that. The other half of that does not have a clue. And they just look at it like, yay, WOW is the best wrestling on TV. So you do have a conflict of outlook on the product. And this has nothing, before I even go into it, because I'm going to try, just because it's 2 hours of this nonsense that I had to sit through. I'm going to try to power through it, but I just feel like I need to get some of this off my chest after watching this. I think I had brought up that Miss New Hire said something to the effect of this show feels like it was written by a 13-year-old. I said that last podcast, explaining why she no longer gave me her notes, why she just basically stopped watching. And the only thing that comes on our stations that we monitor at that time, at least for those stations that she's looking at, It's like 48 hours. And I don't mean the movie. I mean the TV show where they do crime and whatnot. And she's just taking to start watching that. I can imagine that she hasn't changed it since I've been gone. I'll ask her when I go back. But it feels like that's become the interest, or at least she's just looking for anything else to look at. But I said that to say that saying it's written by a 13-year-old might be too generous. Because there's things that take place here that just don't have any rhyme or reason. Now, it's got nothing to do necessarily with the stuff that goes on in the ring. Sometimes the ring work is perfectly fine, and we don't really have an issue with the things that happen there. But when we look at the setup for, the reasons why, how this connects to the next thing, it goes back to everything that I've said before. Like, you can train people to do the moves, but they do not, or it doesn't mean that it's going to make sense. It doesn't mean that the overall scope of what wrestling is being pushed out on this show. And it's probably never going to change. I don't think this is ever going to change. So long as they have the people in charge that they do, without any sort of self-awareness to how bad they write or book, or however you want to phrase it, without any concept of that, and then having a constant stream of people who probably blowing them every second that they get about, wow, it's great, wow, it's good, and this is the best wrestling I've ever seen. As long as that exists, they probably are not going to ever change their mind, regardless of how many viewers they have. And I don't know how many they have anymore because they've dropped off giving out ratings. But I've said before, and I'll repeat, I cannot imagine that they just magically shot back up to 500,000 viewers out of the blue. But I feel like I'm starting to rant. So why don't we just go directly into the show, as this will be somewhat abbreviated. We will skip over the news, views, and updates because I do feel like just on the surface of doing two shows, which I will break up into two different parts. It's not going to be one long video or audio if you're listening to this on a podcast somewhere, MP3 somewhere. I feel like I probably could go on and on and on about some of the things that took place on here, so I don't want to spoil all that goodness by weighing us down with the preceding stuff. So let us go right into WOW, and we will slate this as WOW episode 223. Title, Lots of Bark, Lots of Bite. The air date, February the 15th, chronological number 127. And this show opens up with Animal Instinct coming out the ringside. WOW / David McLane recaps the prior matches and events that led them to being in this position, where they're essentially coming out to, of course, talk to David McLane about not being a part of this match. And Jinx is in full cartoon mode with her voice. And then Collins chimes in and makes it more silly by making this, this is like animal cruelty. I was like, now, they act how they act, okay? That's their thing. And if WOW wants them to do that, that's their business, all right? But let me just say this, and I hope Collins and Jinx specifically hear this. And I'm not talking about them, but just taking the tone of what you're doing. Keep in mind, it's supposed to be a dangerous, vicious match. In that regard, they did portray, I guess, some of it, because I don't want to be involved in this match. Ooh. But the tone that they relate personally out to the public is nothing that says that I don't want to be a part of this. They still come off like this was just written for the Disney afternoon slot. And within the middle of that, I mean, McLane doesn't make it any better. But within the middle of that, Jessie Jones is trying to be as serious as a heart attack. She comes out serious. She gets a solid promo. And she's essentially the only person there that is like, hey, look, no, this is happening. You ain't running away. Blah. Now, there's a stamp of a tone of this is dangerous. I'm going to hurt you, etc., etc. But it makes it hard for that to come through when the opponents, for whatever reason, even though they seem like they're trying to get out of it, are still in a comedic delivery. It's a bipolar angle. It needed to be one or the other. If your opponents are giving you serious and talking about how they want to kill you and this, that, and the other, I mean, maybe put a little fear on it if you're trying to escape out of this. I don't want any part of this. We don't want, the second you turn it into, well, this is animal cruelty and you should be protesting. The second you do that, you turn it from being a serious thing to a silly thing. I'm just saying, it's not just the moves. It's got to be something else more than that. And Jessie can't do it on her own. Now, of course, all this is taped and this in the can, so it doesn't make any difference. But she can't do it on her own. She can't prop up an angle by herself. First off, the angle in and of itself, stupid. This entire angle took place because Animal Instinct had a better locker room for their dog that the babyfaces burst in on. Now I know they're trying their best to get this thing over, but that's what this entire angle is about. It's about them. Wow, they got a locker room and they have dog dishes and they got food here. Wow, I've never seen that before. They have tried to give this some level of credibility to it. Jessie worked extremely hard to get this over. I want to give Big Rig credit in that too. It's the only reason that I don't give quite as much is because I get more Big Rig Betty than I do Amazing Maria. She always sounds like she's in character mode, like you varmints, that like female Yosemite Sam or something. So, but anyhow, they come out, they do that. Big Rigs and Bourbon come after Animal Instinct stands in the ring trying to talk themselves out of being in this horribly dangerous match that they got booked. And then Big Rigs and Bourbon run them off, more or less. As I just said, Jessie Jones is the promo work of this entire segment. Between everybody. Between McLane, between Animal Instinct, and even her own partner, Jessie Jones is the promo here. Because McLane does what McLane does. Fans, is this what you want, fans? That. It does take the bite off of it being serious. It's not supposed to be, fans, this is going to be a great thing tonight. It's supposed to have some air of dangerousness to it, but, Wild doesn't do that, so we'll move on. Next segment, and the first match of the evening was the Dojo Defenders and Ashley Blaze in Top Tier. Now, this is the first thing in this show that just fully got under my skin. So, let's start with the fact that the Dojo, what is this, like the third or fourth time that the Dojo Defenders got a title shot against the vanity belts that have been paraded around on the WoW? Valentina Diamante, where has she been? That was their friend for a while. And then they lost with her. And then whoops, all right, well, we'll get Xena Phoenix. Then they come out and they lose with her. All right, well, fine. We'll get Ashley Blaze. And they come out and, spoiler alert, they lost with her too. Why are the Dojo Defenders just being rotated over and over and over again to Top Tier? Like they're a personal job team. What is this about? So, I could understand maybe if it was the same 3 people that were chasing the belts. But it's literally a case of when one person doesn't work out, we'll just grab the next one that's available. It's almost the complete opposite of what we got with Ariel Sky and going against Top Tier, like what, a couple of months ago? Has it been a full year yet? However long it's been, it's like the opposite of that. Whereas the Dojo defenders get a third partner every time that they can, and they constantly lose. Ariel Sky got a new team every time she went against the Dojo defenders and won. I mean, not the Dojo, the Top Tier and won. It's just, it is every prediction I had for this Trios division, put air quotes around Trios division, that I said from the get-go. It's like, this is not going to go anywhere. Because it can't. Nobody has ever done it well. And they're not doing it well. Like, Top Tier only exists in their own little bubble. And it's only because that they've gotten these belts that was given to them so they can be happy. Or at least 2 out of the 3 of them. So, Top Tier comes out the ringside after the Dojo defenders and their latest partner, Ashley Blaze. Zane brings up the minor fallout that the team had that went nowhere, which I don't even know what was the point of that. I guess they just still had to address it. But even that, even those things, as much as they might have gotten me, it's just, all right, we can let that go. But then we get to the match. At some point in the match, McLane's like, Carapinelli's never been in trouble like this in the match. I'm like, she hasn't? You telling me in the time that she's been wrestling in a while, she's never been slammed around or had, the advantage on her. Again, not important, just a random note. So they start off this match. It's not important who did what because, the important part here is what took place at the end. Now, if I'm going to give any credit where credit is due, I want to say that as in-ring workers, at least within the WoW environment, Campanelli, Crush, they've improved themselves quite a bit. But there's the running theme that WoW has had, and a lot of this is that there has been no heat to anything. It's just random stuff over and over again, just a series of matches that have no stakes and nothing else to it. Why would you care? Even if the Dojo defenders had won, why would you care about this? They don't have anything to them. They barely speak if they've done that. They haven't had any angles where they had to overcome. And the times that they've had them, they've pretty much lost. Like I said, they've more or less turned into Top Tier's personal job team. And not just they lose clean. Top Tier barely cheats against them. They lose clean. So if they do win at this point, like say they come with and they got another match somewhere down the line, 2 or 3 months from now, and they finally win, and yay, the Dojo defenders finally get the titles. Okay, well, if that happens, what difference does it make? Because we've not been given the impression that they've been cheated out of it. We've not been given the impression that, okay, the stakes need to be leveled so that they get a fair opportunity. Which is generally speaking what stipulations in wrestling are there for. Something happens, and I'm being, I'm breaking this down to a basic right now. I'm not condensing things. Something happens, the heel gets away with doing X, Y, Z, and then the management applies a stipulation or the wrestler asks for a stipulation to try to level the playing field. And if it keeps going on, then, somehow the heel finds a way to get around. So we add on these layers, and then it gets to the big finale and the blow-off. That's typically where that goes. Dojo defenders don't have that. They do not have the cause or the need to call for well, we need this stipulation, or we need to be in the steel cage, or we need to be, last woman standing, or whatever. They haven't had that because they've been beaten more or less fair and square. Forget the fact that Top Tier wrestles aggressively. More or less, they lose fairly clean. So anyhow, the match goes on. They look fine throughout the match. No complaints there. Zane at some point compares Candy Crush to Mike Tyson. I wrote down, please don't insult Tyson that way. All due respect to Candy Crush, but I'm just saying, what about her and her boxing career would be reminiscent of Mike Tyson in any way, shape, or form, beyond the fact that she's a boxer? To the best of my knowledge, she's had 2 bouts. Now, that's 2 more than most people walking the planet, so I'm not saying that as a knock. I'm just saying Mike Tyson had a full-on career. At one point, he was looked at and listed as the most dangerous man on the planet. He was an intimidating factor so much that when he walked into the ring, most people were scared before he got there. Finished off matches in 3 rounds or less. Known for explosive power. Known around the world as one of the all-time greats in boxing history. His fame took him to the point that he got to do movie roles. He had a cartoon. He had a video game. Where and how does Candy Crush, in any regard, compare to Mike Tyson? Anyhow, moving on. So, the important portion of the match here, getting past the point where Blaze and Campanelli start out, and we get to where McLane's like, I've never seen her in trouble like this before she turns it over 2 seconds later. Then we get Kai, and she comes into the ring, and Campanelli takes advantage of her at some point and pops the leg. This is when Kai gets to the corner. She tries to do what seemingly is a head scissors, and she just pops the leg right across the shoulders, right? Now, this is important. At least for me, it is important. Because they spend the majority of the time that Kai's in the ring working on her legs. Remember that. Stomping on her legs, popping the knees, slamming it on the mat, this, that, and the other. And she's down and she's selling the knees. She's selling the legs. She gets it clipped out from underneath her. She's screaming and hollering in pain. They're wrapping it on the ropes. Like I said, all of that important stuff. So, as this is going on, and they have drawn a clear target on the knee and leg of Kai, she's able to finally get out and tag off to her partner, Tara Strike. Strike comes into the ring and she starts cleaning up, right? For whatever reason, Blaze decides that she is going to pay attention to what's going on the floor and not be looking at, the action that's in the ring. Campanelli runs around, yanks Blaze off of the apron. This is after breaking up a pinfall, and drops her on the floor. Glitter holds on to Strike's leg. Then she gets punched in the face by Candy Crush with a Superwoman punch. 1, 2, 3, we're done. Again, a clean win. So I'm not interested in seeing some sort of return. It's been 3 or 4 times already. Move on. So they get the win. And then, for whatever reasons, Coach Campanelli decides that, hey, we need to teach him a lesson or beat him up or whatever. So she gives the signal to her girls. They go out there and beat up on both Blaze and who's the other one on the floor? Kai. Meanwhile, Campanelli applies a sharpshooter to Tara Strike. Now, the sharpshooter looks great. It is beautifully applied. And I'll even go so far as saying Campanelli applies a far superior. And, I know you never thought I would say anything like that. She applies a far superior sharpshooter than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson ever did in his entire career. Because he sucked at it. He was terrible with that thing. But that's not the story here. She applies a sharpshooter, and then here comes Candy Crush and delivering love taps to Tara Strike's ankle and knee, kicking her right in the shin guard, by the way. And they're playing this up like, oh my God, she's hurt. They've hurt her. And then McLane gets up like, you're going to pay for this. Now, she was in this thing for like all of 20 seconds, and she's a quivering mess on the ground. Like, what? Her partner got her leg brutalized for like 2 or 3 minutes, and she's walking around fine. Tara Strike gets in this thing for 20 seconds, and it's like the end of the world. And then they spend the rest of this episode talking about it, beating it into the ground. Our thoughts and with Tara Strike. I don't know. Her leg could be broken. What is she made out of? Toothpicks? Why would her leg be broken? It's a standard wrestling move. And then they apply some injury angle on top of this. I mean, if you're going to, I'm not mad at doing an injury angle, but if you're going to do an injury angle, just go ahead and do it. Grab a chair and smack it across the knee, pulverize the leg, wrap it around the post. That's a good one. Take her legs over there to the post and do the figure 4 around the post. Do something different than what you would normally do in the course of a match to express and impress upon the viewing public that this is worse. All this did was just make Tara Strike look like she's Mrs. Glass. This angle is awful. And of course, McLane's on the house mic and he's calling out the EMTs while informing the crowd that she's hurt, which makes it even sound more fake that I got to get on. Why would I get on the mic? Get the EMTs out here. She's been putting a sharpshooter. Just get the EMTs. We need help. I don't need to run in commentary of what happened. If this is real, which, you know, within their universe is alleged to be real. But they're trying to aim for emotion and drama, and this falls very short of that. It fails on so many levels. It's like they never saw an injury angle take place in wrestling at all. Get a steel chair and drive her knee first into the thing. Smack it a couple of times. Concerto the knee. Something. Anything. Do something else other than this. It looked weak and it looked bad. The sharpshooter looked great, but I don't know across the years how many people have been hurt to that degree off of just a sharpshooter for 20 seconds. Even if, let's just say, even if we just didn't want to use any of that other stuff. All right, then. Put her in the sharpshooter, crank down on it, or at least look like you're cranking down on it, and force them to make you release it. Hold it on for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever. Make the refs come down there, beg, plead, or whatever, and just tighten up until it looks like, holy shit, she can't get up. But this is just awful. And it's the reasons like this, angles like this are the sole reason that when he said the greatest wrestling in the world, wow, women are wrestling, like, you cannot possibly believe that. It goes back to what I said about months ago. WoW cannot be used or applied like Glow was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, Glow existed in a bubble of all of his own. It didn't have anything to compete with. People took it for what it was. It was a campy television show that had some actresses playing the part of wrestler. Because the second that Glow was over with, most of them were done. You might have got 1 or 2 that made the effort. But the second Glow was done, they were done. It was a TV show, nothing else. TV show wrapped up in the package of being pro wrestling. WoW is a tablespoon above that. The difference is that WoW doesn't exist in the same kind of bubble. They're in their own self-imposed bubble, sure. But WoW doesn't live in a universe that doesn't have accessible women's wrestling on every turn. On YouTube right now, if you just type in women's wrestling, you probably find dozens of them. Matches from all over the country. Some good, some terrible, some better, some worse. But it's there. Never mind the fact that you got other promotions out there. Whether you want to just try to minimize it down to a division or not, they still have them. WWE got basically 3 different divisions of women's wrestlers. Raw, SmackDown, NXT. And they work extremely hard. And it comes off that way, that they work extremely hard. Not to say that some of the girls in WoW don't. But they're just not credited with that. Because they don't try to put themselves out there amongst wrestling fans. It's like we're going to make wrestling for people who don't watch wrestling for some reason. That's just an absurd thing. Or we're going to preach to our own choir. Whoever likes WoW already, that's who we're going for. It's very, very difficult to get behind any angles here. It's hard to want to root for somebody because there's nothing to root for. Boy. So anyhow, the EMT's coming in. They apply split to her and then they walk out of the ring. Never mind the fact that somehow when this is taking place, David McLane is in the ring as he's calling the stuff about them taking her out of the ring. If you look close, you'll see what I'm talking about. When they actually pull her out. So I was like, all right, so that's an editing error right there. I'm surprised no one called it. Well, no, actually, I'm not surprised no one called that out because it's not the first editing error that WoW's had. And look, they happen. I will fully admit, editing errors happen. They're going to take place. The only reason that I get on a while about it is because you're a national television product with a budget. You're supposed to have somebody at least sitting down doing some kind of quality control. And if 1 or 2 were to get by every once in a while, that wouldn't be a big thing. But this is a regular ongoing thing. It happens like every 2 weeks or so. There's at least something in there that's like, why is that in the show? So, we'll move on before I give myself a headache with that. And we go to the next match, which is Scout Parker versus Keta Rush. Now, I like both participants here. But I will say that the match is probably as inconsequential as it could possibly be. It clearly had nothing, of any significance in this match for, the sake of the show. It was just another match, which they have a lot of those. It's just another match. I like Scout Parker, or at least I began to like Scout Parker just based on the effort and in-ring work that was attempted there. But let's talk about Scout Parker for a second. What has the change from Ice Cold to Scout Parker done for her at all? Like, they re-debuted her to a loss, and aside from one match in the tag team that we haven't seen a partner for about 3 weeks or so, after they lost the very next match they had, she's right back into singles, and then she's been losing ever since. What was the point of flipping her to Scout Parker? And then Keta Rush is the opponent. Where has she even been? I like Keta, but where has she been? And I want to say that her return would be like some major attraction for him, or wow, guys, it's Keta Rush. But, I mean, the audience, and they've just begun to annoy me more and more because they're just trained drones at this point. They just applaud and slap them thunderclappers together for everybody and everything. Every once in a while, they look like they queued up to cheer or chant somebody's name. Or you might get somebody that'll break through and get them to pop because of something that, cool that takes place in the ring. That might happen here and there. But other than that, they're just like, Pavlov's dogs. Ring the bell and they'll bark. So, I guess one of the good things that did take place is Nigel Zane actually promoted Wild social media, which I was surprised about. I was like, because they never do it. He might be the only person that has. Like, hey, go to our social media, go to Pluto TV, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. So at least there was effort there. At least he's trying. But the other thing that became really painfully obvious here, not the match. I think though the two of them, aside from a couple of spots where there's some hesitation from Rush, like she's bouncing around just like, hey, all right, before she actually does something. Aside from the minor spots like that, I thought they were fine together, but it's not going to be a match that's ever going to set the world on fire. They just aren't built for that. At least not in this environment. But back to the point, we've never gotten any real reasonings as to why you're supposed to dislike Scout Parker. She never cuts any significant promos to express her point. She has never explained why she dropped Ice Cold and became Scout Parker to begin with. It's always been explained by David McLane or Nigel Zane. The message of recycling is not a bad message, but they have not explained why it is something that you would root against her for. She hasn't presented it like I'm better than you or you people suck, you don't take care of the play. None of that, nothing to give her this holier than thou attitude, which is usually what we get when we have the old eco warrior trip. I'm better than you are. You people are slobs. You don't take care of the planet. I do this for the world. You can't even get up and, throw trash away. You just drop it on the floor and walk off. It's just why people like me exist, to make you do it. Something. No motivation. And Keta Rush, same thing. She's a bully buster. She's been in this company for 4 or 5 years. She's never had an angle where she's busted a bully. Never. It seems like the most natural, easy thing for them to do. Never has she had it. Now, how does that relate to this particular thing is what I was saying in the first place. There's just no heat on it. It's just a match. And as fun as watching the matches are, the matches on their own will only take you as just so far. They're only going to go just so far before people get bored with just the match. Wrestling has always been built on personality. It has always been built on personality, whether you like this person or dislike this person, whether you are willing and capable of getting behind somebody because they remind you of you, or somebody you see on TV pissing you off so bad that you're willing to pay your money to see them get beat up. Jake Paul. He is somebody that they're willing to pay millions of dollars to because he will bring you box office. Not because he's an amazing boxer, because they've handpicked all his opponents. Not because of anything like that. It's because he has a presentation, whether it's real or manufactured, that he will make people want to pay their money to see somebody beat him up. It's as old as time and old as promotion. But it's like that concept doesn't exist here. Now, another reason that we know that this match is not all that important is because in the middle of it, they cut to Tara Strike in the darkened room in the back somewhere, mumbling to herself about how she's going to get even or whatever it is that she's doing. I don't know. So that's why I wrote down right then and there, I said, we know this match isn't important. It's nice, but it's just another match. And then they come back to the ringside as, you know, they're trying to sell Tara Strike as being in some sort of horrible situation. I mean, I guess they didn't bother to call the ambulance immediately or get her prepped and ready to go. But when it comes back, Keta Rush goes out to the outside apron. She springboards across and she hits Scout Parker with a high cross body. 1, 2, 3. She's done. It was nice, but it was a flat finish. I mean, there was no pop to it. There was no oomph. There was almost like no struggle. It just came back, and then she was heading to the outside springboard, and we're done. She came back. She being Keta Rush did a match, and I'd expect not to see her again for another 3 months. Don't want to say anything negative on them particularly, but the finish was flat. Next segment was a video promo for Holidead, Chella, and Kalaki taking on the Alliance. And, of course, throughout the course of the match that we just saw, the commentators are playing up the seriousness of Strike. She could have broken bones or whatever the case may be. And as that's going on, it brings me back to another complaint. And I'm like a broken record with this. I say it over and over and over again. David McLane is the executive producer. He's the matchmaker. He's the authority there. He's the ring announcer. He's the commentator. So when something like this takes place directly in front of his face, and he gets on the microphone right then and there like, you're going to pay for it. Why didn't you do something right then? What are you waiting for? For what justified reason would he wait? And I'm saying this like in the kayfabe universe. What justified reason would he have to wait to levy some sort of punishment or get even? Or, you know, just like, hey, look, that's too far. You guys are suspended indefinitely until, you know, further event. Where's that? Why would you need to wait 2 or 3 weeks to address it? It's every reason I say he doesn't need to be at ringside for everything, because it makes him as an authority figure, which technically is, it makes him as an authority figure have to pick and choose which things are worth dealing with and not. And one of the reasons is like, why didn't he do it right then and there? Because he had no problems banning the Alliance immediately. And it seemed like the most dangerous thing that you could do for your career and WoW is lie to David McLane. Forget breaking somebody's leg or tearing tendons or hitting them in the head with a rock or jumping them or hitting them with a pipe or breaking their ankles. Forget all the other stuff that's happened there. The only time somebody got banned outright right then, right there on the spot, was when Adriana Gambino was alleged to have lied to David McLane. Right? That was just too far. Can't do that. It's frustratingly bad. So we go to the trios match, the Alliance, and Adriana Gambino, who I even question as a manager at all at this point, or she's just contractually obligated to go sit down next to Dave McLane the second they have a match going on. She just goes right over to the commentating booth. And even when I forgot their opponents, Holidead, Chantilly Chella, and Kalaki, the Island Girl. And the commentators, of course, go back and talk about Terror Strike, and they're trying to, make this sound like some horrible, terrible thing. And I like all parties involved in here, pretty much. But I knew the second that they came out there and they being the baby faces turned around and faced the audience and got on the ropes. I'm like, all right, well, we know where that's going. Here's the spot where they get jumped, and they did. The Alliance is a team that looks good, but they are lost in the shuffle of this company. And I honestly feel like I know it can't happen because they don't own the team or the team name or whatever. But they should just take that act on the road somewhere or something, because where are they going to go with this in WoW? They have no spot. Top tier got to create their own little universe and have the trios titles made for them, the vanity belts made for them. And then you got the Fab Four that sit on top of everything else. There's nothing for the Alliance to do. They haven't even given a mission statement yet. And like I said, I like the Alliance, but that's the facts of the facts. They have not given a mission statement as to why they're there, what they're doing, what they're intending to accomplish. It was just like, well, we're not doing anything else, so we might as well kind of just hook up and hang together. So, as I guess this was the Alliance, when they was coming out the ringside, they cut to the backstage. This is supposed to be already shot footage, and you're looking at Terror Strike again in this darkened room because, there's no better place for EMTs to do their work and check you out thoroughly other than the darkened one spotlight room. So they are sitting there, and Blaze and Kai are giving the performance of a lifetime to that she's as hurt as she is, and McLane is standing there looking dumbfounded like, I mean, I don't even know what he got up for, really, but and then he got Strike like, I'm going to get him, or whatever she's saying. And then we cut back to, the floor, back to present. That's where Gambino leaves and goes, fulfills her obligations to talk to David. Zane asks, top tier has to be punished for this. So I wrote down, all right, so a week or two. It's so devastating an injury and so horrible that they did this that I'm going to give it time to marinate and think about it and punish them 2 or 3 weeks from now. And they just keep all my thoughts are with Terror Strike. This was just a running theme throughout the show, and it just got to the point where it was just annoying. They were trying to beat this thing into the ground. Here comes the hardest working woman in WoW, Chantilly Chella, who just say, you need a partner, I'll be there because, why not? Roxy doesn't have a partner, so I'll do that. And then I'll come back and do this 6-person. Because we don't have anybody else on the roster that can fill that spot. So, getting back to the start of the match. It starts off with the brawl, more or less, amongst all competitors. The Alliance and all of the baby faces are all just, in the ring, just collectively splashing each other, taking turns, beating on each other, and just one after the other. And the referee's looking around like, hey, guys, what's going on? And you just kind of have to let that slide because, what can you do? I probably would have been all right without necessarily the cluster. But once the match settled down into a standard match, they got back to being who I like and what I like about them. The team of Gianni and BK Rhythm, you know, I speak very highly of. I love their work. I think that they are extremely talented in timing and positioning and execution, just top to bottom. I like the psychology that has come out of all members of the Alliance. I really think that a lot of them are just being wasted here. In terms of what they could be accomplishing by, you know, being a bigger name or being utilized in a stronger position. Now, anytime I say that, I usually try to follow that and make it clear that I'm not saying if you lose that somehow that's, you know, a bad thing or, you know, man, they're just jobbing you out. No, somebody has to lose. Somebody's got to do the job. And if that's your role in the company, then that's just your role in the company. But somebody has to lose. So I'm not beefing about that. I'm just saying I think that they're a far more talented team than the position that they are in. And unfortunately for them, their talent hasn't dictated to whoever's in charge that they should be anywhere further than what they are. It's been basically the same team occupying the spot for the last 3 years. That being the team of Miami Sweet Heat. And whatever team gets rotated in around them. Although that seems like that may change in the near future, but we'll get to that. So the match goes on and it breaks down to, like I said, it's standard match. Holidead gets to do some power stuff and whatnot. They had a little bit of a flub up between her and BK Rhythm, but, you know, those things can happen. Then we get Chantilly Chella in there, and then she is the one that they get the heat on. Now, Chella and Holidead try a tandem move there, which seemed like it might have been a little bit off the mark because it was a flapjack dropping Chella on top of Rhythm. I'm sure it would have been better served if she dropped down on her midsection rather than face first across her knees. Gianni gets the tag in. Gianni's great taking the bumps and selling the arm drags. Like I said, she is very good at getting herself positioned. She's great with her timing. I love her work. It's just a shame that we don't get anything good out of the persona of Gigi Gianni in here. Like, she just is kind of there. The match turns around when... I was about to say Holidead. When the match turns around when Raylin, Chantilly Chella, goes into the ropes and Raina grabs her by the hair, preventing her from coming off the ropes. It's a sacrifice play where she takes a punch in the chest to give Gianna the advantage. That is an Anderson maneuver, by the way. At least one of. Sacrifice play. Do what you got to do to get your partner the advantage, even if I got to take a beating for it. So this is where it gets down to where we can see Rhythm, Gianni, Del Rey taking advantage of Chella, going in one after the other, taking shots at her, just one after the other, boom, boom, boom. The pop of the night happens when Del Rey gets in. She comes in, she gives like double shots to Chella. And as she's somewhere midway in the ring, she backs it up and then she gives double chops to the side of the head and throat of both Holidead and Kalaki, which I thought was very amusing. And then she drives the knees right on top of Chella's chest. I thought that was a pretty good thing. I did, because I honestly don't know if I've ever seen anybody do that before, at least not in that fashion. So there was a little bit of advantage there by the heels until the Holiday comes in to save a partner. I mean, Chella was selling everything great. Just being a little rag doll in the ring for the benefit of the heels. And then Holidead comes in for the save. Then she's able to make the tag out to Kalaki. Have we heard Kalaki do a promo at all yet on air? Has she explained why she's there in the least? Anyway. Kalaki comes in. She cleans house. She gets Gianni in the, a barrel roll, which is basically a gut wrench power slam combination. I don't know why she didn't go for the cover with that, but then she gets back up and she gives her a leg Larry, and Reyna comes in for the save. This is where the match begins to break down. Everybody comes into the ring, and then we start a brawl because Del Rey wouldn't get out. She's beating on Kalaki. Holidead comes in and starts beating on her. Chella pairs off with Gianni. Rhythm pairs off with Kalaki. Holidead and Del Rey are at each other. And for whatever reasons, Holidead gets so wrapped up in it that when the referee tries to break it up, she gives him an elbow and forces him out of the way. And I don't know why he chose to wait another couple of seconds or so for the disqualification, because he gave a disqualification after that. It's like, that's enough. Now, he could have given a disqualification, sometime sooner, but this was a DQ win for the Alliance because Holidead could not control itself, apparently. McLane is clearly doing ADR. That's additional dialogue recordings for this because the audio sounds very much different. Now, this is not the first time that that's happened, nor will it be the last. Every once in a while, you can hear it. It sounds like he's just doing inserts to kind of fill in the narrative of whatever it is he's trying to say. But you can hear the change in the audio quality. Again, the Alliance heels win by DQ. And then we get to this. Nigel Zane's interview with Pep Riley. Apparently at the Red Roof Inn or the Motel 6 or something like that. But I suppose it's better than nothing. So, my first question I wrote down is, why is there music playing here? So he asks her, what's going on, in so many words. And then she starts to talk about what she saw in the tape. And then we cut to the footage, allegedly, of the tape being spliced into what we're seeing on screen. And this is where it got a little mind-boggling. So we're looking at the footage, assumably the same footage that Pep Riley saw of Chainsaw as a little girl in this industrial place with a bunch of chainsaws lingering around because, why not? And we're watching this footage of the girl who finds the camera that she used to record herself giving the footage that Pep Riley saw. Did you follow that? I'll try it again. We see the footage of the child chainsaw, baby chainsaw, finding the camera that she used to record herself finding the camera. I mean, I don't know what kind of magical camera it is, but apparently it's able to warp time and space to do this. I mean, it did cut him out of a glowing box, by the way. So we're seeing this, and I guess Baby Chainsaw gave herself a 3-camera shoot with this JVC camera. I mean, they made sure that logo was up there for some reason. I don't know why JVC would care that they're advertising a camera that they had 20 plus years ago. That somehow also shot in high definition because the quality of the footage didn't change at all. And so we're seeing her record herself finding a doll in this same magical box. And then we see her place this doll, which looks surprisingly like Pep Riley. And with surgical precision, she takes a chainsaw and changes the thing's clothes. And somehow all of this was a sign that Pep Riley didn't have to be alone anymore. I wrote down, who wrote this shit? This is just awful. So you're telling me now that, first off, this is pretty long for what we saw her look at the previous week. But this footage was the footage that made her have all this alleged sympathy for Chainsaw out of the blue. This footage was the footage that was like, oh my, and they have to hold your hand and it encouraged you to be who you really are because she found a doll and changed his clothes. Pep Riley, and I am speaking of the persona. Let me be clear. I'm speaking of the persona and the character of Pep Riley on the show, not the persons portraying her. Has got to be the most feeble-minded, individual, gullible, and easily influenced character I've ever seen on television, period. Without any influence, without any sort of prodding, without anything like that, seeing footage of this child in an industrial location of some description with a bunch of chainsaws around her, finding a doll and changing his clothes was the sign to you that I need to change my life. And Chainsaw showed me that. I mean, I guess he's never seen anybody play with a Barbie doll before. You know, they usually tend to change their clothes at some point. Why would this doll and all this crap, you know, for what reason did this child decide to pick up this camera and start recording herself being a masochist to a doll anyway, or a sadist, whichever description it is? I can't remember. I mean, because it's not like she couldn't have used her fingers, but I guess intelligence was never Chainsaw's strong suit. But this is so stupid. And it's no wonder no one takes this seriously. We spent weeks watching Pep Riley somehow try to save Chainsaw from what is alleged to be an abusive, either mental, physical, or verbal, or all of the above, from her sister, Angelica Dante. And I only assume that because we never saw it. And when she does save her, now Chainsaw's morphing her into being a heel? What is this? It's terrible, it's needlessly overdramatic, and it doesn't make any goddamn sense. To the entire WoW roster, all of you are varying degrees of talent. Some, more so than others, obviously. And some are super experienced, some are not. But I know everybody that's there means well and tries to do the best or whatever it is that they got. But I am just now giving up on whoever is writing this bullshit. This is terrible. And there is not enough talent on that roster combined to prop up this stupidity. This is all it took to flip this girl. Seeing a 20-year-old tape of somebody that she alleged to be Chainsaw. This woman who can't even speak, and then now is like, oh, well, I've found who I really am. And I'm sure somebody back there's like thinking this is just genius material. Oh my God, this was frustratingly bad. And there's nobody there that can tell me that if this same angle played out exactly the same way on anybody else's program, WWE, NXT, TNA, AEW, Ring of Honor, if it played out exactly the same anywhere else, they would be crucified for this. And you know it. They would be on the internet within seconds like, what is this? And the only reason that WoW gets by on that because no one cares to bother other than me and torture myself. That all of California's wrestling talent, period, cannot prop this up. And until somebody either removes them off of creative, which is never going to happen, or they convince them to do something else, it ain't changing. You'll get a couple of bright spots here and there. You'll get a match that shines through. You'll get a promo that's probably better than it has any right to be. You'll get an angle here or there that'll go fine for a couple of weeks and then it'll fall off a cliff. Like this. I didn't have a problem with the angle initially, but then it took a sharp detour into stupidity. Like, why would this be the thing that makes her change? And then we got to add in the dramatic music to try to drive the point home that this is spooky and well, I know who I am now. God damn. Whew. So, Pep Riley going heel. I mean, I know it already happened because I saw the next episode, but holy crap. Moving on. I mean, there's really not much else I can say about that. Let's just move. So we go to Sibley Scoles. That's the next segment. And this is probably the best version of we've seen, so far, even if it doesn't relate to the seriousness of the upcoming match. She's okay. I still say that she's good in delivering, lines and she has good presence, stuff like that. I just don't feel like she's a good wrestling interviewer. Only because, like I said, she doesn't really relate to tone. But this cuts to Big Rig Betty and Big Rigs and Bourbon in their locker room. They cut a promo. Betty is all right, but like I said earlier, she's in character. But Jessie Jones is great here. She cuts a great promo, almost as always. And sells the seriousness of the situation. And then it goes back to Scoles, who's pretty lighthearted about it. So, I mean, that's why I say she's not bad, but she's not necessarily good for whatever angle that they're trying to produce. And I'm not going to say that she did anything wrong. She didn't do anything wrong here. I just personally wish that she had relayed more of the seriousness and the danger of the match rather than, all right, guys, this is up next. It's the main event and blah, that. Then she is nowhere near as offensive as, the angles that they just had here with Pep Riley and the terror strike knee collapse or whatever. I mean, and that's another thing. Having this injury angle that takes place on the same episode as what is purported to be some dangerous match with dog collars and chains and Jessie Jones basically being hung from the ring apron still just makes Terror Strike look like she's made out of toothpicks and tissue paper. Next segment is the promo for next week's main event, Paola Mayfield versus Santana Garrett. And then we go to the main event of this evening, Big Rigs and Bourbon versus Animal Instinct in the dog collar match. So, Big Rigs and Bourbon come out first. I probably should have known that something was going to happen at that point. I was like, well, that's not their norm to have the baby faces or the champions come out first, despite the fact that this is not a championship match. But we saw in a few minutes as to why they did that. And no, I don't have a problem with them coming out first. I mean, I was just making an observation there. So they cue up the music for Animal Instinct, and they're not coming. Cameraman goes up the ramp, and then we see the referees forcing these two out to ringside as they're struggling to try not to go. So they're playing up either the fear, the danger, or both. And at least I can give them that. At least they did that. And it's, despite all the other stuff that has gone on in this episode that was just out and out dumb, this, for the most part, at least it makes some kind of sense. Especially considering the promo that you got with Jessie Jones. That she put it over like, oh no, we're going to hurt you. And with the seriousness and the tone that she gave, it does come across like, okay, maybe this is worse than what we thought about. But they're forced down, and immediately once they get into the ring, they try to escape. And Jones and Big Rig stop them by catching them with their hair. So then we get the match, and it's underway. Jones is paired off with Jinx. Big Rig is paired off with Collins. Now, a dog collar match in and of itself is always appeared to be a difficulty to me. But one of the things that seemingly did not take place a lot in here was the use of the chain in punching each other. I mean, I'm sure they probably didn't. They probably got express directions not to do it. I would assume. Now, I can't prove that, and I could be wrong. But I would imagine that some of them just didn't, have any interest in getting smacked around with chains to the side of the head or their body. So the chains in this regard are strictly there, or more or less there, as a means to keep you from running, opposed to being utilized as a weapon. Now, I know Jessie Jones knows differently. I know her mentor, and well, both of their mentors really, Pops, as they refer to him as. For those of you who don't know who that is, Tracy Smothers, the main man in ECW. He's part of the FBI. Representing the Italian sector of Tennessee, apparently. But him and Smoky Mountain, I don't know, I was about to say Southern Fried, but him and Smoky Mountain Wrestling, it wasn't a dog collar match, it was just a chain match, which is slightly different. It's not around your neck, it's around your wrist, and you got to touch the corners to succeed in that type of match. But the use of the chain and the attachment to your opponent still exists. It was just a far bloodier, more aggressive match, and I'm sure that Jessie Jones has seen it, at some point in time. So she knows how these things work. I'm almost 90% positive that she's seen that match at some point. I thought there was a lot of effort being put in here, but I also do feel like Collins and Jinx were placed in an environment that they had to be better than what they probably are ready for at this point. Now, they didn't do bad. When you remove the silliness of their personas around, the acting, the pomp, the pompous way that they talk, and the cartoony demeanor and things like that. When you remove that, there is effort there, and I don't want to discount the effort. I can do without the characters that they portray, but the effort in ring, I cannot deny that, and nor do I want to. Collins is not seen very well in the match, but she at least wrapped that thing around her fist and brought it across Big Rigs Betty's head a couple of times. Put it across her mouth and tried to strangle her, applied a crossface and stuff like that. There was something there. I wish that they had given more coverage to Collins doing it so that it looked more vicious, or they could have sold the danger a bit more. But the effort was at least there. You see her wrap the chain around her forearm and dragging it across Big Rig Betty's head. You see Katarina Jinx holding Jessie Jones up. Like I said earlier, she pretty much got her in a hanging position. They do the old hanging spot that usually takes place in dog collar and strap matches and, things. Any match that has a application where they're going to be connected to one to the other, usually that takes place in it. And on that alone, I'm like, okay, well, at least they gave that. At least they gave some effort. They tried to make it worthwhile and put as much on-screen danger as they could to this match. And they're yanking each other around, and, Jones is pulling Jinx and yanking her to the floor and whipping underneath the ropes and, just all sorts of stuff, just back and forth. Collins has got Betty, and she's got the chain wrapped around the throat. I did not mind the match. I minded the finish, but I didn't mind the match. And I don't think that if I were constructing the episode that I would want an injury angle that I'm trying to sell to some significant degree on the same episode as I have this dangerous match that they're supposedly smacking each other around with steel chains, where somebody not 30 minutes earlier couldn't handle a sharpshooter and a couple of kicks to her shin guards. But aside from that, the wrapping of the chain across the jaws, that was a good thing. It was a great camera shot that they got on both Betty and Jones. The applied cross faces that they got on the baby faces, I thought that was good too. But then we get to the end, where it was Jones and Betty. They got their individual opponents in the corners, and they're just ramming them in the side of the head with elbow after elbow after elbow. They shoot them off to each other. They basically crash them into one another, and then they roll them up for the pin. 1, 2, 3. The pinfall, fine. I think that I just expected and wanted more. Now, I don't think that the match fell quite as flat as what I said earlier with the match of Scout Parker and Keta Rush, because at the very least, there was at least an angle here. And that might have driven up some. I just think that they might have needed a little bit more to drive the point home or get it across, or, make you like really happy that you want to see these people win. It's another one of those cases that this match is taking place in front of a crowd that they can't really pop the audience. Every so often they do, but they can't really pop the audience. This is every example of what I mean when I say that there's no heat on it. There are good matches that take place on this show on a near regular basis. But no one ever pushes these matches around like this is something you need to see. You should watch this match. It's a great match. That doesn't happen. And to put this in perspective, because we're finished with the review, and I'll just say, for the sake of the review, good matches aside, the main event match was fine. I enjoyed that. Didn't necessarily care for the finish, but it was fine. The Scout Parker Keta Rush match, again, fine. Almost all of them were fine. It's just the things that take place around it like it always is. But again, to put this in perspective, WOW is a nationally broadcast through syndication, but they are a nationally broadcast company. A month ago, when they had I don't know, what was it? Some uploads that they got on their YouTube channel. The top tier Dojo defender, Xena Phoenix. Like I said, there you go. There's another rotating partner. Genesis and Tormentor, Raina Del Rey and Holidead, and Penelope Pink and Ashley Blaze. That's about a month ago. On Dreamwave Wrestling. You can look it up wherever you feel like, if you got time and the inclination to look it up. There's a match right now that features Megan Bayne versus Maggie Lee. Now, I'm pretty sure neither one of them, up until recently, Megan Bayne didn't have that, but neither one of them really had any sort of major exposure. But that match, on its own, got as many views as all four of those matches I named from WOW a month ago combined. That one match got as many views as all four individual matches that I just named off combined. And they don't have national TV. They're doing that based on captivating wrestling fans out there, trying to make somebody to a star. And I've said it repeatedly, Megan Bayne comes off like a star. Now, she didn't necessarily come off that way when she appeared on AEW's TV. Her and Ford just came off like a couple of jerks there, like there was no selling, but that's a whole different story for a whole different day. But yes, I mean, it's a personality-driven business. And that's not changing. I don't care how you try to reinvent the wheel. It's not going to change. I know they try to compare themselves to other wrestling promotions. You can't. People right now, if Cody Rhodes was to get on WWE's YouTube channel and do any sort of speech, they would probably have hundreds of thousands of people watching him talk. Not even had a match, watching him talk. But that's because he has a personality that people gravitate towards and want to hear what he's got to say, and they're interested in his story. Same thing with CM Punk. His whole gimmick is that he can talk people into the building. I can talk you into wanting to see this match. There's not a single person on WOW's roster right now, at least by presentation of WOW, that can do that. I'm not saying that they can't do it if given a chance, but by the presentation that WOW has provided, no one's able to do that. Because there ain't no stars there. And WOW doesn't allow them to be stars. And I'm sure that I've used a reference earlier that half of the roster agrees with me, the other half probably doesn't. I'm sure a lot of them convinced themselves that they're absolutely stars. And amongst the WOW faithful, they are. But the WOW faithful ain't enough. And if it keeps going in the route that it goes, they will never be enough. They will never be able to get them to give other people the opportunity to want to watch and tune into the show and follow it and stay with it. You can get people to watch, and you can get people to enjoy the match, and you can get people that's like, oh man, that looks cool, and they look at the outfits and this, that, and the other. But that only goes so far. When it's just a repeated, non-stop train of just matches with no real meat to them, it's not going to keep anybody tuned in. And then having overdone, ridiculous stories, angles that start from nowhere, don't make any sense, have no clear direction, can't understand why it's happening in the first place. When they do stuff like that, then it makes it worse. This episode was bad. And it was bad by the merit of the creative that was attached to it. So I don't want to impress upon the talents that's there that they individually were bad. No. But the creative that you're trying to support or push or make work, I mean, I know you can only do so much, but yeah, that is just bad. But I understand. The checks gotta clear. So that was a brief one. And now I'm gonna close this up because we want to make sure it's in two different parts. And I gotta sit through another one. We'll be coming back to another edition of Wild's Review. And I can already say in advance, having already watched it, it is probably going to make me rant just as much as this one did right here. I am almost completely positive of that. That is going to make me rant just as much, if not worse. But just for the sake of, even though it's already aired, just for the sake of, let's read what they had prepared for me in the press release for the match that was already aired. The title of it is going to be called Call Me Daisy Lane. The episode is 324. For me, it'll be 128, chronologically speaking. The air date will be February the 22nd. And they write. Tag team competition heats up. Princess Aussie and Tormenta battle for four times tag team champions. Miami Sweet Heat. They kind of phrased that wrong. To start this episode in WOW, Women of Wrestling. Also in tag team action, the friendship has resulted in a new tag team in WOW when Chainsaw and her new friend Pep Riley compete together against the Mighty Mites. The changes Pep Riley has gone through lately, how will she show up for the match and wrestle with her new friend? New tag team partners Harley Swag and Penelope Pink seek to continue their momentum with the win against Chantilly Chella and Roxy Fierce. And in the main event, Santana Garrett gets her rematch against Paola Mayfield, who tonight will not be accompanied by Abilene Maverick. She's barred from ringside. Having already watched that, I have no comments to say other than check out my next review when I upload that, so we can have a good conversation about how good or bad, mostly bad, that this episode was. And on that note, folks, this is Mr. Green signing out with my normal, this is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and I will see you on the next go round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.